I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Katherine Jackson, the writer and director of the short film Attachment Theory, as part of our Meet the Experts film shorts panel. First thing I have to ask you about is that drone in
Yes.
that movie.
Yes.
How did the design for that come about?
Oh man. Well, that took a long time. That took 3 months to design with some
Really?
great concept artists. The key was that the drone had to have personality, yet you also had to believe that this would be manufactured by a company and by the hundreds, right? So it was a key to make sure that it didn't look too animated and also was something that was buildable. I wanted to shoot as practically as possible and I wanted to build this drone. And I wanted it to be able to fly. And so I'm a bit of an arachnophobe. I have a thing about spiders, and I wanted it to look quite spider-like and bug-like. Um, so yeah, after months of designing, I designed this thing that when it was static on the ground, it would sit with its like weird little spider legs, and then when it would fly, it looked like a dead spider. The legs curl up when it goes to fly. Because yeah, I wanted it to be kind of bug-like because a lot of drones are. I looked at a lot of different drone designs that are out there. Yeah, and then the eyes were also important because it had to be able to express its emotions. So designing those were also a trick. But yeah, it took 3 months to design and 3 months to build.
I completely get where you're coming from. I also do not like spiders one bit.
Yeah,
I think I saw one in my bathroom once, and I started looking for new apartments.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Even though I'm in no place financially to do so.
No, no.
Um, uh, so I'm curious, how did this idea come about to you? Did you have a traumatizing experience with a delivery drone at some point?
You would think it's definitely no, but I also just saw, by the way, on Amazon, they're now offering drone deliveries to your doorstep, by the way. So it's not that far away. No, the idea came to me during the pandemic, when I was watching everyone self-isolate and be in their house, and a lot of people became understandably agoraphobic and scared to go outside, and also how many people struggled with their mental health, and became anxious and depressed. And so that's very much what inspired my main character. Um, and then the drone part of it came from also with the pandemic, watching our dependency on technology and how much we relied on technology to keep us connected. And while technology is meant to serve us, it also doesn't always serve us because it also drives disconnection. With it, we don't need to leave the house. We don't need to interact face to face with each other. um, you know, we have permission to never have to have contact with one another again. And I think that does affect our mental health in some ways. So all of that, all the pandemic, that really inspired this film. And also just the rise of AI and how fearful I am of that.
Yeah, I actually was curious. Do you feel like you have an innate distrust of new technology? Because it always seems like everything's just always getting
Yeah,
enhanced. And
yeah,
of course, and like you were saying with AI, everything is
yeah,
just yeah, it feels like it's just hitting us all at once.
yeah,
Do you feel like
yes.
you have an innate like distrust of that?
Absolutely. It's developing faster than we ever anticipated it, and especially with super AI. And you're seeing it even like what was released this year with Sora, and the fact that you don't now need animators, you need someone can just type in a prompt and it can conjure up something that would normally take months and months and months and a whole team of people to work on is just now conjured up like that. And you see it with Midjourney too. And it's developing faster than we ever anticipated it. We have technology now that we thought was 5 to 10 years away. And I think we're playing with fire a little bit.
I completely with you. Everything just makes me think we're just closer and closer to the robots taking over.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Skynet is going to go live very soon.
Exactly. So much of this film, I mean, hinges on the person playing Olive, the main
Yeah,
character, and you cast an actress named Abby Damon, I believe.
yeah, Abby Damon. Yeah.
What made you cast her as the film's lead performer?
She was just amazing because Olive inherently she's not unlikable, but she has unlikable traits. She's addicted to medication. She's anxious. She's depressed. She's disconnected and a little bit zombie-like. And I had to have someone who was able to be sympathetic along with that, and bring that to that performance. And I auditioned around 100 girls, and Abby stood out and was just so phenomenal and made her real and made her really, really sympathetic. And that was such a key to me. And I felt for her from the moment I saw her in her performance. I wanted to just give her a hug. And that was important for the character of Olive.
The climax of the movie is such an incredible scene at the towards the end, and I'm curious as to how long did it take to shoot the chase scene, and what were the logistical challenges to filming that, if there were any?
No, there were. I mean, we had to shoot a chase in a forest, and it took 3 days to shoot the chase. And unfortunately, the forest really was right next to our house. We shot in the forest that's next to the house, so it didn't take a lot of time to move any of our cameras and equipment, but it did take time to shoot that chase. And Abby was amazing, having to do running over and over and over again. And I wanted to make sure that the chase was exciting to watch. I wanted all the shots to be kinetic. I wanted any shot on her to be unstable and crazy, and any shot on the drone to be stable, because he is more in control. And it was even just down to those technical decisions and shooting the drone. Even with a drone, we were chasing a drone with a drone camera a lot of the time. So yeah, there was a lot of technical aspects to it, but it was really fun. And yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was as exciting to watch, to make it as exciting to watch as possible. But yeah, and obviously when you're in a forest, you can't block things out. Unlike the house, I knew kind of where the camera was always going to go. So you're thinking on location, on your feet, where's the best possible shot that I can shoot right now? Where can we go? Yeah. So yeah.
You spoke to this earlier with the when we were talking about the drone, how that was practical, and it's unbelievable as a practical effect.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what sort of special effects were used in the making of this film?
Special effects were used anytime it was a safety hazard. So the drone has a gun at the end of the film, and anytime that it fires the gun was a special effects shot. And that was purely for safety reasons. And also the drone's eyes as well were VFX, and that was also a key thing that took time to nail down, because anytime that the drone had to emote, I didn't want the drone to look too animated like a Pixar character. It had to still look like a computer, and that was harder than I thought it would be to find that balance.
So this is your first film that you've written and directed.
Yeah.
And I believe you're 28 or something like that.
28, yeah.
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 Yeah, you're making me feel old. I'm 38, so I'm curious as to what made you wait until now to direct your first short film.
Yeah, I never felt ready to. I never felt ready enough to tackle it. It was so daunting to me. And I spent my 20s working on film sets and just observing the process of filmmaking. I didn't go to film school. I wanted to. And then when I was 19, I was offered a job to intern on a set. And so I did that. And then that just led to me being on film sets, doing different jobs, shooting behind the scenes. And I just enjoyed being a fly on the wall and observing everything, what filmmakers did right, what they did wrong, why a set would run really well versus when it would run badly. And all of that was really good education for me. But I didn't feel ready until, I shot this movie when I was 26. So yeah, when I was 26, basically was when I felt like, okay, this is time. And it was definitely after the pandemic of spending a year inside.
One of the other things that I just loved about that drone was when I noticed early on the hand that's
Yeah.
underneath there, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, I've never seen that on a drone before, and of course then it
Yeah.
ends up being very. But was that like something that you guys that that you thought that came about a bit later, or was that like right from the get-go with the design?
No, that was something that came later and actually was really hard because it's a delivery drone and I knew it had to deliver stuff and it had to be able to pick up things but I never knew when I was writing it how I was even going to do that because a drone with some sort of hand or claw could look ridiculous.
Mhm.
So in the end, yeah, I just decided that it was once again sort of like bugs, a scorpion tail, but in reverse underneath, and that it had to have this dexterity, but it should look still quite bug-like. And yeah, not be too out there or like too much of an extension from the drone.
I swear, at some point I was actually prepared for that thing to give Olive the finger at some point.
Yes,
You know.
we played around with that on set. We definitely played around with that on set. Yeah, we had a lot of fun with those hands.
Well, Catherine, thank you so much for joining us,
Thank
and we look
you.
forward to seeing you on our panel in just a little bit.
Thank you so much.
I'm Charlie Wright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Esteban Pedraza, the writer and director of the short film Bogota Story, as part of our Meet the Experts film shorts panel. The first question I wanted to ask you was, yeah, it's you get the sense from this movie that that even though it's fictional, there is a very personal aspect to it.
Mm.
And I was curious as to what were the common parallels between the experience your family had in Colombia back in the early 90s and what the family in the short goes through.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so this is the first movie that I made in Colombia. I am Colombian. I grew up my whole life in the United States, but I've been back there so many times. My dad's lived there his whole life, and I think one of the reasons why I wanted to make it was because I wanted to connect with those memories. You know, I was there when I was a baby. I was there when it was such a turning point, such an important time in the history of Colombia. And so I wanted to even conjure or create these memories that are latent, but I don't have or can't picture. And so through the stories of my family and the stories of my parents, especially, it's exactly what you said. There's a certain truth, which was basically that my mother had the desire to go to the States. She already had residency there, and because her family had already been there for a while. And my dad was very much committed to staying in Colombia, and all his opportunities were only there. And so I took this very real conflict that happened in my family that's actually a very, very common conflict, not only in Colombia, but in Latin America. And I think a lot of developing countries where people go to the United States for a brighter future. And so that was the let's say truthful basis of it, and then I extrapolated that into the fiction that eventually became the film.
Um, what I know there's probably a lot of complications or a lot of complicating factors to what I'm about to ask here, but um, uh, I was wondering if you could just talk about what were some of the specific things that were happening in Colombia in the early 1990s that
Yeah,
forced someone like Pilar, the character in the movie, or
yeah.
your mom to want to leave and seek a life elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, so Colombia has gone through a lot of things. There was civil war for a long time. Depending on who you ask, it's kind of still going on. So there was a lot of revolutionary forces that cropped up in around the 50s and 60s that then became funded by drug trafficking. And then on top of the revolutionary forces that have their own sort of political agenda, there were the paramilitary groups that cropped up to combat them. And then at the same time, there were just drug cartels that didn't have a political idealistic aim, whose only aim was to make money from drugs. And a lot of those groups had a hold on different parts of the government. And in order to maintain that hold through fear, they would a lot of the times have car bombs go off in the cities or certain fear tactics to just let the public and the government know that they were still in control. And so these are the types of things that were happening with frequency in a city like Bogota or the other like major cities of Colombia at the time. So not only was that going on, but just in any country like Colombia, throughout Latin America, there's the daily grind of an economy that is struggling sometimes, massive wealth gaps, and just like opportunities for certain people in more developed countries like the United States or Europe. A lot of those people end up taking those opportunities because there's more room for growth there. So it's extremely complicated. It's very complex, and that was just like a very surface level taste of what was going on. But yeah, that's a whole area of study for a lot of people.
Has life improved in Colombia at all since the time that the film takes place? And I know it's been several decades, but
Yeah.
has it?
Yeah, I mean, and that's another one of it depends on who you ask. There were some administrations that were able to curtail the power of these groups, but of course that came at a cost that was extremely controversial. That then led to a rebuke of that movement. And currently the president in Colombia is a gentleman who used to be part of one of the major revolutionary forces. And so that's like an interesting development. So has life improved? I would say from my sort of half foreign perspective, I think it has. But at the same time, it depends on who you ask. Some people would say it's getting dangerous again. Some people would say they're making progress. So that question plays into, again, another very complex analysis of the country.
In looking at the press kit, I was looking at all the festivals that the film had been to, and the one that just popped out to me was the Bogota International Short Film Festival.
Yeah.
And I was curious as to what was it like getting to take this film to Bogota for the city's short film festival and getting to have a hometown audience see the movie.
It was the scariest moment of my life because I obviously my whole family's from Bogota. I've grown up going there so many times, but then to tell a story that was so personal and to call it Bogota Story, and to be as much from the United States as I am from there, I had a lot of just nerves and fear around how the film was going to be received. And one of the most beautiful parts about it, first of all, was just being able to play in this incredible cinematheque that's in downtown Bogota. That's like on par with any cinematheque in the world. Incredible, incredible facility. And it was so well received, and we had a lot of buzz, and people kept coming up to me and telling me how much they loved it and how much they were hearing everyone else talking about it. And we ended up winning several awards that night at the award ceremony, including Best Actor and Best Actress, which was for me like extremely, extremely a moment that filled me with a lot of pride, because for me as a director, like performance is what I value the most. And so the reception was really, really good, and it just felt validating and all that.
Have you showed the film to any members of your family, and what has their reaction been to it?
Yeah. My family's been dying to watch it ever since we shot it, and they're very supportive, and they love it, and they feel it's very authentic, and so many of the things came from them. So I would hope it's authentic, and beyond the family, it's like even the YouTube comments of people who are from Colombia and people who grew up in the United States who were born in Colombia and things like that. It resonates with our community so much, and it's that authenticity that I'm so proud of. So that's like, that's been one of the main things for me.
What was the most challenging scene for you to shoot for this film?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenging scenes. We shot on 16 millimeters, so the entire camera production of it was very difficult. You know, you can't get film in Colombia. The camera that we shot was the only one of its kind that was available in Colombia, which and it's highly available here in the United States. Um, and so just the whole shoot itself was difficult. One of the most difficult scenes was the scene where they're at an outdoor restaurant and it was like raining the whole time we were shooting. But it was, you know, it was a drizzle, so we were able to kind of get away with it. Um, Funnily enough, we shot a scene that isn't in the film that actually was the most difficult scene to shoot. It was like a night exterior, and there was supposed to be a blackout, and so there were no lights. There were only lights on cars and stuff like that. We were also dealing with babies and babies crying and trying to calm them down when they're not supposed to cry, and then trying to get them to cry when they were supposed to cry. So yeah, that was it was tough. It was really ambitious. It was my first one in Colombia, so I didn't know anyone. It was my first time with this crew, but we were able to put together an all-star crew. And yeah, it was I would just say it was difficult all around, but it was worth it.
Well, Esteban, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our panel in just a little bit.
Thanks.
I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Robert Moniot, the director and writer and editor of the short film The Ice Cream Man, as part of our Meet the Experts film shorts series. First question I wanted to ask you is, how did you come across the story of Ernst Kahn, and what made you want to tell this story now?
So my wife is a United States diplomat, and we were working at the White House, and the State Department called and told us that we were going to be moving a year earlier than we thought we were going to be leaving to the Netherlands, and gave us the address of our new house. And I Googled the closest beach and saw this incredibly beautiful vista. And as I was reading, in the bottom right-hand corner, it said, "This is the beach where the Nazis executed over 300 resistance fighters during the war." And so instantly, as a filmmaker, I got this horrifically beautiful picture of a person on that beautiful beach with their hands tied behind their back and a blindfold on. And as I kept reading, I found the story of Ernst Kahn, who was a beloved owner of the biggest ice cream parlor in Amsterdam. He and his family had fled Nazi Germany in 1936 because everyone assumed that the Netherlands would be neutral and would be safe for Jewish people. And to his horror, Klaus Barbie, the future Butcher of Lyon, came to Amsterdam and targeted, arrested, tortured for 10 days, and then ultimately executed Ernst Kahn just to make an example out of him. He hadn't really done anything wrong, but when they came for him, he fought back. And the outpouring of anger from the community in Amsterdam was so great that it led to what is now known and commemorated every year in Amsterdam. It's called the February Strike, where over 300,000 people in 1941 went on strike and shut the Nazi war machine and the city down for 3 days. And I couldn't believe I'd never heard this story. When I finally did move to the Netherlands, I was surprised that even a lot of people in the Netherlands didn't know about Ernst Kahn. And this was in 22. And I really felt even back then that this kind of story of the impact that one person can have on their community was sorely, sorely needed to be told. And I really felt at that time that, especially for younger people, I felt that kids aren't getting basic civics classes anymore. And I really felt like I wanted to get that message out to them. So that's how I found it. And that's what made me want to do it.
I think you struck quite the mother lode in getting Noah Emmerich to play Ernst, and I was curious as to what made Noah the right person to portray him.
Ever since I had seen Noah as an actor, he was always that guy that just you instantly fell in love with him every single time, no matter the size of the role. There's just something about his character, his openness, his spirit that I felt really for this part would do a lot of the work for me. Because it's a short film, you don't have a lot of time for the audience to fall in love and care about the man. And like I said, every movie I'd ever seen Noah, even when he sometimes played bad guys, I always kind of just loved the man. So I was really grateful that he said yes when I asked him. And there was also a really personal connection to the film. When I called Noah and asked him to read the script, he said, "Oh, I'm really, really busy. It's going to take me a long time." I said, "That's fine. We've got time." And he called me back half an hour later, and he was very emotional. And he says, "Do you know about my dad?" And I go, "No." And Noah's father and aunt, with their parents, fled Nazi Germany in 1936 and moved to Amsterdam and lived right around the corner from the ice cream parlor. There's some evidence that they actually knew the Kahn family, and Noah's aunt was classmates with Anne Frank. So that began a series of miracles, on this film that kept happening. These just unbelievable coincidences and events that have really kind of like formed this entire production in so many ways.
On the flip side of that, you also, like you said, you have Klaus Barbie as a character in here, and I'm curious as to how did you go about casting a role as notorious as Klaus Barbie?
So we ended up shooting the first half of the film and a great part of the film in Indianapolis, or rather in Indiana, in Columbus, Indiana. We couldn't find an ice cream parlor anywhere in Europe that seemed right. And we were having trouble even finding some in Los Angeles or New York. And the one that I found in Columbus was just amazing. So Noah came on board early. So when it came to casting, we didn't have a ton of money. This was a not-for-profit endeavor, so we raised money the entire time. We'd raise some money, we'd shoot. We'd raise some money, we'd shoot. We'd raise some money, we'd shoot. Never make a movie that way, y'all. It's the worst idea ever. But it was also quite interesting, and so we cast regionally. And Nick, the gentleman that plays Klaus Barbie, Nick Pietsch, he was a regional actor, originally, I believe, from Cincinnati, but I think at the time was in Atlanta working. And we saw a lot of people from LA, a lot of people from New York on tape, but Nick just had that. If you read the Nuremberg accounts from survivors of Klaus Barbie's torture, they all said the same thing. He was an incredibly charming man. Under any other circumstances, they would have found him delightful. But he was also just a monster. One woman, he hit her so hard with a medieval flail that he broke her spine in two. But she talked about his thin smile, and she talked about how he complimented her for not speaking, not giving up names, because she was a resistance fighter. We used part of that in the film. So Nick just had that equal mix of menace and, frankly, likability. We wanted to be careful to not make the film too much about Barbie, but at the same time, I wanted to try to instill some sense of what he really must have been like from all accounts.
One of the interesting choices in this is the use of the song "We'll Meet Again," which I, of course, always associate with Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
And also Johnny Cash, because that's the last song on his on the album he put out before he passed away.
Right.
I'm curious as to what made you choose the song "We'll Meet Again" as the song that continuously comes up and ends up being that like thread throughout the film.
So there are reports that Kahn, as he was being executed, actually was singing. And the history doesn't tell us what he was singing. But I had a sense that, given who he was and the choices that he made, that it must have been sort of an act of defiance for him to be singing. And as I was trying to figure out what might be the song that could both be melancholy but triumphant, my mom, who's British, my mom, said, "Oh, well, it's got to be, this one." And I listened to it, and I knew she was right. And Vera Lynn recorded the song twice, once in 41, and then again, I think in 43 or 44. And the second one was more widely known and widely heard and more popular. But I thought it was interesting that they had that song that early in the war on the radio, so that you could imagine that Ernst would have heard that song, especially there's a lot of music in their house. And so, yeah, I just felt like it really, when you get to the end of the movie, and he's about to be executed, I really felt like it was going to be incredibly poignant, especially since it's in so many ways, a happy tune that you hear earlier in the film.
Have any members of the Khan family or his descendants seen the film? And if so, what has their reaction been to it?
So from the get-go, the night that I had the idea, I tried to start finding if the Khan family were alive, whether there were descendants, and it was almost like they didn't want to be found. And one of the amazing things that happened, it was one of the results of not having all of our money together right away. And so it was a blessing in disguise that we had to wait, because in the time that we were initially having to wait to raise money, and then the writers and actor strikes happened, we were delayed for so long that the Khan family finally found me. They found me on Facebook. They'd read a newspaper article that I'd given an interview for. And so the next day I'm on a Zoom call with like 50 people in Israel and Switzerland and other parts. They're all lovely. Nurit and Amos, who are the grandchildren of Ernst Kahn, are now dear friends. They have not seen the movie yet because they wanted to wait and see it on the big screen. But Ora and Amos, Ora is Amos's wife, they're both in the movie with Amos's daughter and son-in-law in a really, really key scene. So it was an honor to have them on set. But the other thing that was amazing about getting to know them is they told us things that had happened in real life that aren't in the history books. For example, there's a scene in the film where Ernst is in prison the night before he's to be executed. And all of a sudden, Ursula, his wife, shows up. She's been allowed by Barbie to visit him the night before he's to be killed, which he doesn't know she's coming. And he's horrified when she gets there, terrified that she's been captured. That really happened. That's a true thing that actually happened. And when Noah and I found out from the Khan family that this event had happened, we were like, okay, well, we have to write this in and shoot this scene. And another one of the extraordinary miracles that happened on this movie is the prison cell where we shot is the actual prison where Ernst Kahn was held. And the cell that we shot in, it's a national monument. No one's ever allowed to go inside there because they preserved it to be exactly as it was at the end of the war. But they let us shoot that scene on death row in that cell, which was six doors down from where Ernst Kahn was actually held.
Wow. Well, Robert, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our panel in just a little bit. I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today, as part of our Meet the Experts film short series, I'm speaking with Katherine Jackson, the director of Attachment Theory, Esteban Pedraza, the director of Bogota Story, and Robert Moniot, the director of The Ice Cream Man. The first question I wanted to ask you guys is, I think there's something so distinct about not just watching short films, but the making of short films and the parameters you have to work in while doing that. And what I'm curious about is, what is your favorite thing about making short films specifically? And let me start with you, Esteban.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what I love most about making short films is the challenge of being able to transmit like just human truth, human experience in a short amount of time, and it becoming efficient in that, and knowing how to tell a story that maybe not a complete story, but a story that has a complete feeling in it in a short amount of time. And I just like how it's not so gargantuan. It's like you can do it. It feels possible. You can get people to sign on because it's not a huge time commitment. So you can kind of like figure out ways to get great talent or great crew members or anything like that. And I also think the coolest part about showing shorts which I think is part of making it, is just the types of audiences that you meet. Because it's not a huge market, it's not a big commercial market, right? Short films. And so the people who find time to dig them out, the people who find time to get to the theater at a festival, whether it be a big one or a small one, you know, it's like an act of discovery every time. And so I think that's a beautiful thing as well.
And what about you, Catherine?
Yeah, I agree. Like doing the festival circuit has been really fun, and meeting other filmmakers, especially ones who are just starting out like myself, has been really cool to connect with them. I also really liked that I was able to do things creatively and make creative decisions that I don't think I could do in a feature, because with a short film, every shot counts. And so there were things just like the drone in my film has bright blue eyes. And I made the decision early on that I wouldn't put blue in any of the costumes or any of the production design. Not that anyone would ever notice that, but I was very pedantic about it. So there's no blue at all in the film except for the drone's eyes. And I don't think I could be that specific with a feature. That would be a lot harder to do. But yeah, and then just designing the shots and yeah, what you can do creatively with a short, because you have such limited time, is I think you have more freedom versus tackling a feature where it's just, you are just trying to make the day, you know, and not fall behind. And yeah.
And what about you, Rob?
Well, I echo everything that Esteban and Catherine said. I think going to a film festival where there's shorts there and seeing one type of movie after another type of movie after another type of movie after another type of movie is a really, really interesting experience. And I love the community on the festival circuit. This is the second short film I've directed. The first one I did a long time ago before I had children. And then my wife decided to become a diplomat, and this is kind of like my coming back party. But one of the things in this particular case that I felt was great about the fact that The Ice Cream Man is a short film is very early on, educators started telling us that they really felt that a sub 30-minute movie, or right around in that time frame, was perfect for the classroom, because they could introduce the film, they could show it to the kids, and then everyone could talk about it afterwards. And so we've actually now partnered with the Anne Frank Center to develop a curriculum that's going to accompany the film as we give the movie away to schools and libraries and museums all around the world. So that's really exciting.
I was curious as to the last short that you guys saw that really stayed with you, that you saw, and it just had a staying power with you. I'm just curious as to what that was. I want to start with you, Catherine, on that.
I loved Dream Creep. Dream Creep was great. That played at Sundance this year, and it's a horror film, and it's also very, very comical in the way that, you know, there's a very small difference, I think, between horror and comedy. I mean, because they're both, it's timing and delivery, and it's kind of just the music that's different, I think. But I loved Dream Creep. Yeah.
And what about you, Rob?
You know, I'm struggling to remember the name. I was at the Naples Film Festival, and there was, I believe, an Australian comedy that I want to say was called The Choice, or maybe The Decision. And it starts out as a very, very tense drama, where both children have been bitten by rattlesnakes in the desert, and you're rushing to the emergency room, and the parents are distraught, and the medical people are coming in, and the doctor comes in. He's like, "Sorry, it's fine. We've got enough vaccine. It's going to be fine." And then they realize they've only got one dose of the vaccine to save the children. And I'm sitting there going like, "Oh my God, this is a brilliant setup for a very, very, very tense thriller." And the mom's like, and the dad says, "It should be Sheila. We can lose Sheila," you know. And so the whole thing is twisted, and it becomes just a sublimely dark comedy just out of nowhere. And I apologize for forgetting the title of the film, and I don't remember the filmmaker's name, but that one stuck with me. It was just so perfect, and bravo to them.
What about you, Esteban?
Man, I've seen so many being on the circuit for the last year. One of them was called is a Mexican movie called The Business Trip, Viaje de Negocios, and it's just a heartbreaking, beautiful coming of age. But I have to give a shout out to my wife right now, who's also a filmmaker, and her short film called Thirsty Girl played Sundance as well and just came out yesterday on Vimeo and on YouTube and everything. So and I helped make that movie. I was a producer and an editor on that film, and so yeah, definitely go check that out.
I should also say that I haven't seen either of their movies yet, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them.
Yeah, same. Me
Yeah.
too. Me
Yeah.
too.
The short film, we are an awards site, and it's interesting how we've a couple of years ago we had this whole thing where the Oscars jettisoned several categories, including the 3 short film categories, off of the main ceremony. And I was curious as to what was your reaction a couple of years ago when the Oscars did that, and how do you respond whenever people call to do such things, to make the telecast shorter? And I want to start with you, Rob, on that.
Well, I mean, I understand the concerns of getting the telecast to be shorter. However, I kind of wish it would go back to the old days when it was just a private affair and in a hotel lobby, and there wasn't any cameras, and it wasn't a big thing, because I mean, it was always supposed to be for the filmmakers by the filmmakers. Um, I think that shorts are such an incredibly precise art form that they should not be taken away from the Oscar telecast. I think the language is akin to like songwriting. Instead of having all that time and space to write a novel, you've got to do it in 3 minutes to 20 minutes or whatever. And I think that's important. I think that people should be able to experience not only well, the other thing too is like, and I should stop talking and let other people talk, but if short films don't win Oscars, then no one will know that short films are still out there. It's a great way to get eyeballs on a project.
How about you, Esteban?
Yeah, I think it's a complicated question. Honestly, if I were the Oscar telecast, I would probably remove the shorts and remove a lot of other ones, because if it's a telecast, you just people get bored after 4 hours, to be honest with you. And I think it's cool how they show like part of the acceptance speech in the commercial, because then if you're really watching and if you're really like engaged and you really want to know, then it's there. But yeah, if you're trying to get eyeballs and sell advertisements on a show that's consistently losing viewership, you got to do what you got to do, I think. And shorts are there. Shorts have their avenues, and for the filmmakers who are up and coming, who get to win those awards, those Oscars, Academy Awards that we're all vying for right now, the right people are going to know about that, and it's going to help. It's going to help shorts, and it's going to help those people. So yeah.
What about you, Catherine?
Well, this year they did telecast all of the categories, and the runtime of this year's Academy Awards came in shorter than the year when they didn't telecast them. So I think that that's telling. I actually don't think it makes a big difference. I think it's important to give people a platform and a stage, and especially that's someone's highlight, of their whole career for a lot of people, winning an Oscar. And it's also their time to thank their crew and everyone who worked really, really hard on that. And I do think that that should be televised. And I don't think that we should be selective about who, should get that stage and that platform and who shouldn't, especially when in the shorts categories. And also, I think when they did it, it was also like sound designers and hair and makeup as well. And those are the names that aren't as known, but I don't think that that means that they're less important. So I think that it is important to give them that moment on TV and let them have their speech and celebrate them.
And this is a question I like to ask people. As I said, if we are an awards site, let's have some fun here. Imagine that that your film wins an Oscar for something, an Oscar for your short film. What is your personal ideal walk-up music? as you make your way on, as you would make your way on stage. Catherine, I want to go to you first.
A walk up? I mean, don't trip. Don't trip. Try to remember any, the speech and all the people you want to thank. From the people I've talked to who have won Oscars, they just say that you just go into a blackout. Like the people I've spoken to, they're like, I don't remember what I said. I just went into a state of shock, and then I have no idea what I said into that microphone. So as much of an amazing moment that it is, I think it's also like one of the most terrifying moments. So I would just be trying to think of, everyone who got me to that place and who I wanted to thank and acknowledge, and to not trip or make too much of an idiot of myself.
But what would the music be? That like
what would the music be?
Yeah, as you make your way up on stage.
Oh, my drone dance song. Yeah. That like yeah.
And what about you, Esteban?
I think I would have to go with this Colombian artist called Carlos Vives, who is very important to me. He's like the music of Carlos Vives I've been listening to my whole life, and through that music has always been like one of the main ways that I connect with my Colombian heritage. And so for me, that would be huge, especially because right now we have the opportunity to be the first Colombian film to ever win an Academy Award, and I would be the first Colombian person to win an Academy Award if we actually get that far. So I think his music would just be like the perfect touch for that.
And what about you, Rob?
Well, I'm clearly a little bit older than my colleagues here. I'm 57 years old. I've got 4 kids. My wife is a United States diplomat. We've been on the road for 14 years, traveling to all these countries and seeing what life is like on the other side of the pond. So it would definitely have to be a reunion of all of the original members of Journey singing "Don't Stop Believing."
Yeah.
Sick. That's great.
Or I could just sing it. I could just sing it on the way.
You should, and on the stage as well.
I can't think of a better note to end on. Well, Katherine, Esteban, and Robert, thank you so much for joining us. And to all our viewers, please like, share, and subscribe, and keep coming to goldderby.com to make your predictions in advance of the award season this year. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.